Hey guys, it's me cyoubx, and today I'm going to be reviewing the FangCun. A quick note about the pronunciation, it's actually pronounced FangCun, which is an area in Guangdong, China, but that's really hard for English speakers to say, and myself included, so for this review I'm going to be calling it the FangCun, but at least now you know how to pronounce it. At least kind of, because I'm not really saying it 100% correctly either. The only other thing I want to say about the review is that I'm going to be as objective as possible. From what I know, the FangCun is a knockoff of the Dying Zhanchi, but I'm not really going to talk about that until the recommendation section. I'm more compelled by the actual performance of the cube and whether or not you should get it based on your own ethical reasons. That's not something for me to decide. So the FangCun is a 57mm 3x3 and it is modeled after the Dying Zhanchi. You can get a FangCun for $10 on SpeedCubeShop, which is cheaper than a Zhanchi. From what I can tell, the differences in the pieces are really minor. One of the only things that I could really clearly see that was different was actually the size of the torpedoes. The FangCun seems to have a longer, thinner anchor, whereas the Zhanchi is a little bit shorter and a little bit fatter. On the other pieces, I noticed some flash on the FangCun. I think on the Zhanchi it's in the same place, but it's not as pronounced. Either way though, the flash does not make a difference in the performance of the cube, and when you turn it you cannot feel the flash being there. The FangCun had a couple flaws. The first one is pretty minor. The center caps do fall off. In my experience, they only fell off during an extreme corner cut. It didn't actually fall off during a regular solve. The main problem with the FangCun out of the box was actually the hardware, namely the springs. They were really stiff. At the time of this review, I have put them in a Guhong version 2, and it actually works quite well. But in the FangCun, they were just too stiff, and I basically ran into two problems. The first was loose tensions. If I loosen the tensions, which is what the cube came with, the cube actually turned pretty well. The movement was pretty fluid, but what I experienced was that it couldn't really corner cut too well, just because it caught. The catching issue made it kind of annoying, and so I decided to actually tighten the cube. The problem with tightening the cube is, although you get the 45-degree corner cut, it takes a lot of effort just because the springs are too stiff. So there wasn't really a happy medium for tensioning this cube, and that kind of made me upset. So what I ended up doing was I actually replaced the hardware with Diane hardware, which is a little bit insulting to Diane, but I wanted to see how good the cube could be, and I'm really happy I actually made the swap. So I actually swapped out the core, springs, and screws, and re-lubed the cube. And I have to say that the FangCun with this set of hardware is actually better than a Zhanchi. Of course, if you buy the Diane hardware along with the FangCun, that kind of voids the whole perk of it being a cheaper cube. But some of you probably have a Diane cube that you don't use because it's worn out, or maybe you just don't like it. You can harvest those parts, put it into the FangCun, and you'll get a pretty amazing cube. As far as the turning of this cube goes, with the swapped hardware, it's a little bit slower than a Zhanchi. Not a lot slower, and when you actually use algorithms or actually do a solve, it's not noticeably slower. What is different is this cube is a lot smoother and actually a little bit quieter than a Zhanchi. So I actually like that aspect of the cube a lot, and it's one of the reasons why I like the FangCun more than the Zhanchi. With the Diane hardware and with the right tensions, it can currently corner cut 45 degrees and reverse corner cut 2/3 of QB with no pops. I will say though that at the 45-degree corner cutting, sometimes the caps will fall off, and that has everything to do with that extreme corner cutting that I was talking about before. As far as popping goes, this cube does not pop, mostly because I tighten my cubes pretty much all the way, so there's not really a way for the pieces to fall out. But if you do like looser tensions, then you should expect the same popping as on a Zhanchi. Recommending this cube is a little difficult just because of the aspect of it being a knockoff, so I'll sort of walk you through it. If you're someone who is completely against knockoffs and you want nothing to do with them, then you shouldn't need my opinion. You should already know that you're not going to get one just because that's what this is. So if you're one of those people, do not buy the FangCun. There's no real way I can convince you to buy one. But a lot of you are probably like me, and you just want the best cube for the lowest price. If that's the case, and you really don't care too much if it's a knockoff or not, then the FangCun, in my opinion, is better than a Zhanchi. Finally, if you're someone who actually doesn't want to buy knockoffs, but you want the best cube anyway, and so you're kind of fighting yourself whether or not you should buy the cube, I would say to actually let this one go because it's not miles better than a Zhanchi, if at all. Personally, I just like the feel of the FangCun more than the Zhanchi, but performance-wise, they're pretty much identical. So if you don't want to break your own values, then do not buy the FangCun. If you do get the FangCun, I would recommend getting the die and hardware with it if you don't already have the spare set. But of course, that only applies if you have the money, because I'm assuming a lot of you actually want the FangCun because it is cheaper. If you are on a tight budget, the FangCun is pretty good. The cube with the factory lubricant and the springs actually feels a lot like the cyoubx Zanchi, which is a great cube. So it's more than usable out of the box, but if you are able to, I would actually buy the die and hardware to go with it. I'm going to give the FangCun 2 grades, one with the stock hardware and one with the swapped hardware. With the stock hardware, I'm going to give the cube a B+, and that would be a little bit lower than a Zanchi, which would be something like a B+ to an A-. And of course, this is all benchmarked relative to a Guhong version 1, which is at a B. So with the stock hardware, like I've said, the cube is good. I think the springs are a bit stiff, but the cube is very usable, and I get pretty good times with it. The factory lubricant is amazing. It's fantastic, I guess, which is a bad pun. But the cube is pretty good with the stock hardware. Now, if you choose to swap the hardware with the Diane springs, then this cube easily becomes an A-, and it's getting close to that A mark. The only real flaw with both cubes is the center caps. They do fall off if you corner cut a lot, so if you're a rough cuber, you might find that annoying. For me, I haven't had it fall off a single time during a regular solve, and I've done probably 500 solves on it. So center caps aren't really a problem unless you're a rough cuber. The FangCun is a pretty amazing cube. I would say it's a bargain cube, and it can easily become a main. So if you're looking for a new speed cube and you don't like the one you currently have, I would say consider getting the FangCun. It's a very good cube. So thank you, Cameron, for sending this to me to test. I absolutely love this cube. And thank you all for watching. Toodles.